Everyone, welcome. This is episode 346 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I'm Jaymes, joined by Paul, and stepping in for Ryan, who's still on his Euro trip, is Steve, who's, I guess, maybe lobbying for Ryan to not be allowed to be back in the country because the Brewers have been doing so good without him here.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out a way to trap him over there so that way he can't come and ruin things.
Yeah, I think we're all on board with this at this point. Like, we don't officially believe in jinxes on the podcast, but this is pretty crazy. So I think Ryan's got to stay there.
Maybe if we figure out a way to get him like Liverpool season tickets. I feel like he needs to stay over there.
I like you're very caring stick or carrot versus stick here versus. I feel like the consensus is we got to make him stay, whereas you're tempting him to stay. But it's very nice, Steve. Very out of character.
One time.
Yeah. But how have things been, Steve? It's been a minute since you've been back on this podcast. So how you been?
Yeah, it's been busy. We're gearing up for, high school football starts next week.
Oh my God.
Friday.
That's insane.
So, It is. And we have high school football broadcasts on our station here in Milwaukee. And so we're in full just like ramp up mode for that. And that's going to be 2 months of just nonstop. So yeah, I'm kind of gearing up for that. And then actually we have all the WIAA championship tournaments and stuff on our stations now as well. So like we hit the fall and it's just like nonstop high school stuff from here on out. So yeah, it's busy.
Super cool though. Paul, how you been?
Doing all right. Can't complain. My kids' school starts on Tuesday, which they're not happy about, but we all are. Yeah, summer went this is fast summer. Like, as you get older, time moves more quickly. It's actually not good at all. But happy about that. And we are taking them to see Imagine Dragons this evening. I want to be clear, we're taking the kids to see Imagine Dragons this evening. They're fine. They're like a starter band, but should be a good time.
Yeah, decent show. They got some songs everybody can sing along to.
I have been preparing my children because they have a new album, and you know how new album concerts go. And so I've told them already, like, there's going to be a whole bunch of songs that you guys don't know. And I've even said, like, do you want to listen to the new album? And they're like, no, I want to hear them the first time at the concert. Like, no, that's a rookie move. You do not want to do that. You want to listen to the album before you go to the concert. But alas, so we'll be up late tonight. I'm not tired right now for the first time ever on this podcast, even though it's the morning. If we were recording it tomorrow, I would be exhausted. Yeah. But
that's awesome. Great that you're passing along those lessons to your kids. Like the important stuff. Like, no, listen to the album before you go to the concert.
Yep.
That's practical life advice right there. So hope you have a good time. We got a lot to talk about in terms of the Brewers expanding their lead improbably, maybe in the NL Central, because we were talking last week about how they missed their chance to really do some damage against the weaker part of their schedule, and they went out and actually looked like a good team despite losing Christian Yelich for the year. So we've got some questions and some conversation about that. But first, a reminder, as always, you can become a patron. Help support us at patreon.com/MKE tailgate. $2 a month guarantees you get your questions answered both on this podcast and on Reporting as Eligible. And Paul, you're gearing up to, as you said, do a proper RAE this week. So what are you planning to cover?
Yeah, we'll have, I would say, the official season premiere. If you didn't listen last week, I talked to Aaron Schatz of FTN about the DVOA projections and whatnot. But we'll have at least a good chunk of the regular crew this week, and we'll do a proper episode, go over whatever happens in the preseason game this evening, go over how the defense is actually going to work under new coordinators, fringe guys who may or may not make the roster, stuff like that. So we're going to get into our regular cadence as the season picks up here, and should be fun, should be a good time. And I know everybody I don't try to be cagey in the off season about like who will be back on the podcast, but we should have all the normal contributors to Reporting as Eligible back for the vast majority of the season. So just a matter of week to week who's available, but we got somebody offered to actually be available. So we'll do it this week and get started.
Has JR been able to cope without the Simone Biles content this year?
Oh yeah. It's been a major factor on Hard Knocks so far too. HBO really lucked into that one with Jonathan Owens going to the Bears.
They really, really did. Although there's already been Simone Biles content, so it hasn't stopped because she showed up to Bears practice wearing Packer gear, which was fun. So
she's been busy, man. She hasn't had time to change all the colors.
Of course,
so
not.
That's fine. But that should be a fun time looking ahead to that season kickoff for RAE. A reminder too, at patreon.com/MKE tailgate, $5 gets you question priority plus the additional exclusive content that includes the minor league extra with Ryan and Spencer if Steve ever lets Ryan back in the US, and the reporting as eligible mini pods as well. Even if you're not a patron, a reminder you can support us another way. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you're listening to this right now. Give a 5-star review. And while you're there, be sure to hit the subscribe or follow button. All right. So as I mentioned, a pretty solid week for the Brewers so far. We're recording this on a Sunday morning. And as of now, the Brewers, split 4 games against the Dodgers. That first half of the series was not looking promising. And then the back half turned things around pretty well. And then they've gone out and won the first 2 against Cleveland, who was actually, in the running for best record in baseball heading into this series. So super encouraging week there. And in the meantime, the rest of the NL Central sort of played like they're not interested in making the playoffs anymore. So because of that, the Brewers have a 10-game lead in the NL Central, the biggest division lead in all of baseball heading into Sunday. And now they're also just a half game out of the second seed in the National League. Which is kind of crucial when you look at, setting things up for the postseason, but also sort of improbable given how they've been here, all the injuries, everything like that. And, this past week maybe helped lessen the sting a little bit of the news that Christian Yelich is going to be officially out for the year. His back rehab program wasn't really taking, and he ended up having surgery on Friday. So I guess let's just start there. It always felt to me, at least, that it was sort of unlikely that he was going to be back at any point this year. But do either of you have any hopes at all that he was going to be back like in September or for a playoff run?
I actually did have a little bit, just because I feel like this injury was really a writing on the wall injury. And if they could pain manage his way back and just have him gut out, playoffs aren't that long, really. Even if you keep winning them, gut that out before going under the knife. I thought they would actually try to make that happen. The fact that they couldn't make it happen means it is as serious as we thought. And I know Ryan remains eternally optimistic over in England, but there's a good chance this is it for him too. So, and I think you have to have those conversations with a guy who's going to be 32 having back surgery in baseball that hey man, you might not be back after this. Just because of age and injuries. And so if you can gut it out, you maybe should, try and get the ring, try and be a hero. So I thought they would actually give it a shot. And the fact that they can't is quite unfortunate, but also not that surprising.
Yeah, I think it would have been difficult, even if he was able to come back. What kind of Christian Yelich would we have gotten? Would have been the, no power Christian Yelich, who's basically just, hopefully drawing walks and maybe spraying the ball around every once in a while. And what's his play in the outfield like when you got a back like that? Yeah. I don't know. So I don't know. Yeah, it's tough. And every time I think maybe this is it for him, he does seem to come back. And then I think every time he's back, it seems to be a shorter stint before something major happens again. So we'll see. Yeah, I would say we're probably coming up on the end of a career here. When I say soon, probably within the next couple seasons, having to make a decision. But yeah, hopefully we can get another run out of him. It won't be this season, which it's a massive hole it's leaving in the outfield right now.
Yeah. I mean, you guys talking about obviously that the pain management thing was going to be key, but some of the quotes from Matt Arnold after the surgery were kind of concerning to me. So, he did talk with the media over the weekend saying it was a successful surgery. So that's good. But he ended up having a discectomy, which sounds worse than maybe it is. They basically cut off a piece of a disc to relieve the pressure on the nerve that he was feeling. It doesn't sound great, but he also, Matt Arnold added that, Yelich was feeling shooting pain through his back and the legs through the surgery, which I don't know if we ever had that level of detail when it came to the extent of the back injury. But again, that makes it sound like it was a whole lot worse than maybe we were fearing. And, both of you indicating he's 32 years old, and there's some research on this type of surgery and how long a career can go, but he's already 32 as you guys mentioned. And I guess, is there any optimism that he's ever an all-star performer again after this? I mean, like, not to be all doom and gloom, and Ryan's supposed to be the cheery one, and he's all in on maybe another 2 or 3 seasons of all-star play, but I guess I'm just skeptical. I don't know.
The only thing I can say optimistically at all is that medical technology does consistently get better. And so a back surgery that is taking place now is not the same as a back surgery that was taking place even like 5 years ago. So ACL tears are no longer the doom they once were. Even a lot of shoulder injuries for pitchers, they're not good, but they used to be 100% you're dead, and now they're like 50% you're dead. So there's that. But the other thing is, just in terms of getting an all-star performance out of him, that swing has a lot of torque in it. Like, that back injury he comes by honestly, and I don't think you'll ever get the sheer power out of his swing again. He might be able to contribute as like a guy who still has that amazing eye and can take walks and spray it all over the field, but that's far, far less valuable, especially if you're not out there running around like Jackson Chourio does in the outfield, which he's not going to do. So, but I think the best case scenario for him coming back is probably average, and I don't think the odds of that happening are very high either. So I would say goodbye to All-Star Yelich. I don't think we're gonna get it.
Yeah, I feel like we've said goodbye to All-Star Yelich before, and then he had this season. So
fair.
I can't say like it'll never happen again, because obviously he's proven us wrong. But again, yeah, 32. I mean, he's a tall guy, so the idea that he's having back issues and, like Paul said, the torque on his swing and stuff like that, at a certain point, it's just going to add up to be too much. So if he does, it's going to be kind of it's going to be that swan song of a season for him, I think, where he knows it's the end. He basically gives it his all for like a season and, tries to go out on top, and that's going to be it. Because, I mean, he's been dealing with these back issues it was before he had the knee issue that took him down. I think he was missing time, periodically with back issues. So, all of that, it just adds up over time. And yeah, 32, he's going to feel it at this point going forward. I don't know how the recovery works, that he's back with any consistency.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be back in time for spring training, but again, we'll see what the load management looks like, if they've got to keep an eye on that going forward too. I saw a quote from Pat Murphy saying, yeah, because of that torque, the biomechanics people, the Brewers are sort of amazed he was able to gut it out for 12 years of a pro career before something like this happened. There's just so much torque there. So yeah, I guess it's a question of, does he modify the swing, or does he just keep doing what he's been doing? That's the long range view, but specifically with this season, obviously, we've talked about what the offense looks like without him in it for this year. And Jackson Chourio's kind of stepped up to fill some of that. William Contreras is hitting again, but I guess, Steve, any questions or worries about the viability of the offense, especially heading into the postseason? Like, is this a lineup without Yelich that could compete in the postseason?
I mean, I think Yelich was such a stalwart of the lineup as far as just being a presence to get on base, and they don't have a replacement for that. I don't think anybody is just an on-base machine the way that Yelich was. And I mean, really, you look at it, you're replacing Yelich with Sal Frelick right now, and it's just such a drop-off that, you're basically hanging your hat on the fact that Chourio has turned into a new player to be the replacement there, which it's really hard to then say, like, yes, this 20-year-old's going to keep it up at this rate for this long. I would imagine, Major League Baseball is going to keep adjusting. They're going to try to fool him, again, at some point. Maybe somebody will figure it out, so we got to be ready for him. I mean, he's shown the ability to make adjustments constantly, which is great. But again, it's going to be a process going forward. So, I mean, as far as the lineup construction, it's just such a hole. I don't know how they replace something like that.
Yeah, they've gotten at least a little bit of boon from Garrett Mitchell, who he has not played well lately, but he has at least maintained his platoon splits, which is at least somewhat helpful. He's hitting 250, 368, 400 against righties, and that's not nothing. It is, however, a not terrible sort of medium Yelich impersonation. Getting on base 368 is good. That's not a terrible slugging percentage. It's at least a little scary. He has been worthless against lefties, but you can work around that, especially since Mitchell is an elite outfielder as well, like all the other outfielders left on the team are. But you also don't know how long Mitchell's success is going to last, even on the platoon side, as he does have holes in his swing that can be exploited. But there's not a good way to fill it. It's nice that they've at least had that sort of Mitchell platoon side to mitigate a little bit. And should mention, like, the offense is not as good, obviously, but while Yelich is one of the better defensive left fielders in the game, he is bad compared to what they're putting out there now defensively, because they're playing center fielders across the diamond. So they do get a little bit of a bump up defensively, which also helps mitigate a bit. But yeah, offense is just not as good, and it's going to take it on the chin, and it's going to be their big weakness in the playoffs.
All right, moving on. We've got Patreon questions this week. Willy Adames been, tracking along offensively too. That definitely helps cover some of the loss of Christian Yelich in the lineup. The weird 3-run home run thing continues to gain traction. 10 3-run homers. It's easy to make the offense look good when you have those, but defensively, it's still an issue. And this is something that we've kind of been talking about all year, keeping an eye on the metrics and wondering if what's going on there exactly. So we've got a couple of questions on Patreon about Willy's defense specifically. So first we have Lucroy Suitcase asking, am I fooling myself thinking that Ortiz or Terang at shortstop would be better than watching Willy Adames boot routine grounders? I hope some dumb team pays him too much. Sorry for being a grump, just frustrated watching him play defense. And then Brian Polakowski asking, with Adames's fielding woes of late looking like Ryan E5 Braun in 2007, at what point does Murph sub Adames out late in a game to send a message? Side note, everyone needs to listen to Brewers Unfiltered podcast this week with Rob Renown. If you haven't yet, great stories that they will bring joy to any Brewers fan. So Willy's defense, Paul, we've been keeping a close eye on it, and you just pulled up the numbers, and it's actually getting worse. So yeah. I guess the numbers match the eye test there.
They do. And, when we talk about errors, there's always, I think, a bit of suspicion that comes with it. It's often the case that excellent defensive players with good range make a lot of errors because they get to tougher balls. That's not the case here. And all the eye test and all metrics basically agree with this. I've got prospectus pulled up because I actually think DRP is the better infield statistic. But you can look at any of them because they all agree on this point. But of all shortstops with at least 300 innings played at shortstop, he ranks 33rd out of 39 with negative 2.4 defensive runs saved. That's quite bad. His range, Willy's strong suit's never been the range. It's been like positioning and making good plays and whatnot. But as you get older, the range goes down. His is 0. It's not the worst. The worst is actually Paul DeYoung. Orlando Arcia is the worst. Old friend, nice. Negative 11 attempted range. But he's average at range, and he is booting way too much. He's not getting to as many as he had before. His range score is negative 1.1. He's definitely a liability at shortstop at this point. Now, I don't think that you necessarily want to be taking Willy out of the lineup, and I'm not sure you want to play him anywhere else. That's, I think, the other important thing here, because he still has one of the best bats on the team. You have 2, I think, above it. With Chourio, maybe 3 now. 3 well above average bats. It's him, Contreras, and Chourio. That's kind of it. So you can't be doing late-game defensive substitutions if the game is close at all, because you will need that. And while he ranks very low, there's definitely a tier drop-off at the bottom of this chart where, there's a couple guys who are unplayable. Let's see. Max Schuerman, I don't know who that is. O'Neal Cruz, unplayable defensively at shortstop. He's not there yet. He's on the very bottom end of playable shortstops. So he's bad, but I think, Willy he's been around a long time. He's a good teammate. He's a good guy. And I don't think that you are going to fix Willy by sending him a message, because I don't think this is the result of laziness or, just unprofessional play. This is the result of a guy who was never the most athletic shortstop getting older. Willy's kind of got some J.J. Hardy in him, who, wasn't a great athlete for the position, was just a good fundamental player. And when those guys lose a step, it starts to go downhill pretty quickly. I think that's what you're seeing here. One thing I now feel that I didn't earlier is I like Willy. I like having him on the team. He's a good clubhouse presence, and he's probably going to be gone next year. And it's probably okay that he's going to be gone next year, because he's going to become unplayable at his one position where he is playable pretty quickly going forward.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, would we like to see Ortiz or Turang play shortstop? I think it would be interesting. It would be good, but what do you do at third base then? You're not going to move Adames to third.
This is just deck chair rearranging.
Yeah, you move guys around like that, I think you're just creating other holes that you're going to end up having to fill with probably even lesser ability. So it's kind of the arrangement they're stuck with at the moment.
Yeah, and honestly, having him flanked by those two helps to mitigate this as well. That is a big deal, and other teams couldn't cover for Willy as well as the Brewers can.
Right. I guess speaking of Bryce Turang, Jay Google our next question on Patreon asking, who has been worse in the second half, Turang or Frelick? It's bad. And then who gets cut or optioned first, Bryce Wilson or Elvis Peguero? So obviously, Turang fell way off after our all-star pushes for him. And I think part of the reason we were pushing so hard for that is because we kind of knew it was smoke and mirrors and it wasn't going to last forever. But maybe Bryce has seen some glimmers of hope of turning it around more recently in this last week, but they both been, Frelick and him, have been pretty brutal offensively, Paul.
Yeah, and I think to answer the question asked, Frelick has been worse. And part of that is they both contribute really well defensively. I would say Turang, even though he's not playing short, plays a little bit more of an important position. He gets to so many balls, but he's also just been a better offensive player. Frelick has just the weirdest batted ball profile that you'll ever see. And Turang has this like softball player approach that, while it's not good exactly, it keeps him kind of above water for an elite defensive player, where he kind of sprays it around. Every once in a while he'll yank one, but if he just can hit one down the third base line and run really fast, he'll get on a whole bunch. And Frelick's profile kind of looks like he tries to do that, but just isn't as good at it. One of the weirdest parts about it is his squared up percentage on StatCast is in the 92nd percentile, but his hard hit percentage, his barrel percentage, his average exit velocity, and his expected slugging are all at the 1% level. The bottom line with Frelick is he actually needs to hit the ball harder. And if he doesn't hit the ball harder ever, he's never going to get on base. And you see this when you watch Frelick play. I swear once a game, he squares up a ball, and I'm like, oh, that's a line drive, at least single. Maybe he'll turn it into a double. And the shortstop just jogs back 5 steps and grabs it. Because when he squares it up, it doesn't do anything. It looks like me trying to hit the ball out of a major league infield. So he's been worse, and I think that profile is very concerning. He actually does need to swing harder, give up some of his 98th percentile whiff rate, and start to maybe strike out a little bit more. But Turang's approach actually makes sense, and he executes on it. He's just not a good offensive player, but this is okay. Frelick's, I don't think he knows what he's doing, and he needs to turn that around. The other thing is we got a lot of Frelicks. He's much more expendable. Turang can move to short and increase his value, even if his offensive profile remains the same. The Brewer outfield is very, very full, and he is the worst offensive player in it, including Blake Perkins when he's healthy. So yeah, he's the worst one, and I'm sick of watching him hit.
Yeah, I mean, Turang will at least run into a ball occasionally.
Yeah, he'll yank him out.
The wall. Yeah. Where Frelick doesn't do that. And I mean, I just think as a second baseman, Terang's defensive profile like is significantly more important than what Frelick adds. I mean, they could easily replace Sal Frelick's defense, especially when like Perkins comes back. Like it's replaceable. Where if Terang isn't there, I don't think you're going to get that kind of defense at second base from anybody else.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you can justify what Terang is doing at the moment and say, well, this is how he's going to at least help the team. Where Frelick, again, if they weren't in a crunch where they basically have 3 healthy outfielders at the moment, like, I don't know how you play him.
Absolutely. And like the average exit velocity for Terang isn't great, but it's the 24th percent. So like, think about, you've seen everybody. We've all seen Bryce Terang hit a lot. We know he does not, crush that many balls. Think about how much weaker Sal Frelick has been than Bryce Terang. That is not playable at the major league level. It's rough.
And it's a little weird because I feel like when Frelick came up, like he ran into a few balls early in his tenure and at least was, hitting the short porch out in right field in AmFam, where he doesn't seem to have even a chance to do that right now.
Nope. It's bad. It's rough.
Yeah, and especially from an outfielder too, where you kind of need more offense, or you expect more offense than a defensive second baseman.
Yeah,
it's just tough to keep in there. I think you're both absolutely right in that. Once Blake Perkins is back, he'll take a bulk of that playing time from Frelick. It's just sort of out of necessity right now. Next question, Jack B asking Bryce Terang revival. Please say yes. So we kind of covered why maybe there's more optimism with him. Obviously, still hasn't been great. I mean, he's got a WRC plus in the second half of 28. Not good. But in the last week, he's at least shown something, right? He's had a double or two here. He's had a triple. So he's at least getting those extra base hits. And he's been better in the last week. But I don't know, man. He sort of is what he is. I guess if we get a hot streak, Steve, in the next week or two, that'll help. But I don't know if you can count on it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what are you looking at for a revival? Again, I mean, I think, you get the hot streak. You lean on the defense. But, I mean, Bryce Terang is a good lesson in, I think it was Keith Law's attitude towards all-stars, where he was always against rewarding guys who had a hot first half, but had no track record. They didn't have pedigree. They didn't have previous seasons that justified it. And those guys not getting a spot on the all-star team unless there was just no other options. Bryce Terang is a good example of that, where it's like, this was a guy that you're looking at the way he was getting it done. We weren't going to complain about it, but I think everybody saw the holes in his game and how basically the bottom could fall out on him pretty quick. And we've seen it in the second half. This isn't a surprise. Again, when, Paul goes over the batted ball profiles for Bryce Terang, it's hard to maintain that level of production he had in the first half, when you're not really striking the ball that hard. And you're basically, I mean, do we just call him a gimmick offensive player? I mean, that's really what he is.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to use. He is a gimmick hitter. And he's not ever going to have a true revival or a true improvement unless he actually starts adjusting his actual way of hitting to like more power and more pulling the ball. But as long as he keeps doing this, and if you just go look at a spray chart, you'll see this, like 90% of the time he hits the ball the other way. It is very much a Willie Mays Hayes, you should be hit the ball on the ground and legging it out. You should not be hitting fly balls approach. And every once in a while, I think he'll get a matchup where he'll be like either allowed or he'll just decide, I'm going to try and hit a home run here. And he's pulled like a few. And so he's not totally helpless. And maybe that will happen at some point. It's not going to happen this year because he's not going to change his approach right now with 38 games or whatever left in the season. So what you get is what you get. And what you get is like a guy who's like probably a natural 650 OPS guy who can leg out grounders and steal bases when he gets on base, and that's all very valuable. But he's probably not going to replicate his first half. And even his first half wasn't that good. it was better than this, but it was still 277, 341, 390. I mean, he slugged 390. Right. The best half season that he probably will ever have, he slugged .390. That's what you're looking at here. So he's a gimmick player. We can just hope that he gets more right-handed pitching to face than he has recently. That would help. He does have pretty good platoon splits, but this is what he is. He's a softball player with a great speed, and that's fine.
And it's such an extreme profile. Like, I don't see, Bryce Terang aging into some other kind of offensive player, like adding some kind of skill. He's not going to add power. He's not going to add the ability to like pull the ball harder or anything like that. I mean, he figured out something that gets him by right now.
Yeah.
And again, as long as he's not a complete black hole in the lineup and he's playing plus defense, the Brewers can use him. And the moment any of those skills start to fade, like, they shouldn't hesitate to say thanks for your time and let him go.
I will actually go to bat a little bit as to there might still be a little bit of non-exploited power in that profile, only because he very much does look like Frelick in that his whiff percentage is in the 98th percentile of batters. There is some conservative nature on that swing, and his exit velocity, 24% sucks, but I do wonder if you trade it off a little bit on that whiff percentage, if you could get it up to like 50% and maybe hit out like 15 home runs a year. I don't know that that's worth it, but I think it's at least possible that he could unlock a little more power. It's just they've definitely tried to do that, and it hasn't worked so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's trended so far in the other direction.
Yes.
I don't know how you then like flip the switch and say, well, now I know I need to hit the ball harder, so I'm going to start doing that. Like, if that was the case, they would have said,
do that.
Hey, let's work on being a legitimate big league hitter from the get-go instead of, basically having this detour around, gimmick hitting for the time being.
Right. I would just distinguish him from Frelick, who, like, I think Frelick had like 2 seasons in the minors with double-digit doubles and like never any home runs at all. I mean, that's not true. A couple. And Terang at least has a couple of like 20 double seasons and he's got 1 double-digit home run season in the minors. So it's not nothing, but it's not like a power hitter profile either. So you're right. This is probably what he is, but you can dream.
All right, JVT, our next question, asking, just a bit outside, the story of the 1982 Milwaukee Brewers could be the greatest documentary that has ever lived. However, exclusively airing in Marcus theaters and failing to be picked up by any of the countless streaming services leads me to believe it won't be. Paul, you have a palate for this type of discourse. Will the producers of this film insert themselves too deep into the story and ruin it? Or will the countless footage carry this film to its infinite glory? So this trailer dropped recently. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but another 1982 project for the Brewers.
Just what they need. Let's just turn them into our own version of the 85 Bears that didn't actually win. I feel like if you are doing this project, that you are probably too much of a fan to make it a good project. But I could be wrong. So, it's such a niche thing at this point. You should put this on like the Weather Channel. That's the best place to have it for the audience that's likely going to watch it. But like I'm not gonna watch anything about the 82 Brewers anymore. I've done that. I'm good. I don't need to do it again. Just go read 9 innings if you want to do this kind of thing. It's probably going to be better anyway.
Is there any other team that's lost a championship that has been as documented as heavily as the 82 Brewers?
I don't think so.
I mean, maybe, what was it? The 86 Red Sox?
Oh yeah, I guess that. But I mean,
but that team's not celebrated.
Right.
That's the difference. Where this
quite the opposite.
Yeah. We're the 80. Yeah. I mean, what was it? It was a few years ago.
An entire episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm to apologize to someone for treating him so horribly because of it. So.
Yeah, it took like 30 years for him to get an invite back to like Fenway.
Yeah.
I think. So yeah, it's wild how it's fine if people are excited for it. Hey, go and enjoy the documentary. I mean, we've been hearing about it for so long and celebrating 25 years and 30 years and, whatever we're at, that it's kind of like, It's great.
They can play it at the Bud Selig Experience and replace whatever that is right now.
But also, as far as streaming services, I mean, why doesn't MLB TV just have like a bunch of team documentaries, in a library there that you can watch anytime you want if you subscribe to that?
Yeah.
Like, load it up. Let people watch that stuff. They did finally add the MLB Network. So, I mean, I would imagine it's probably content for that in the off season.
Yeah, totally.
I think we should start, working on our next documentary project, or first documentary project, where we'll do something on the 2018 Brewers that made it to Game 7 of the NLCS and celebrate them the same way. All right. Michael Parr asking this week, at what point does looking at the magic number make sense? It's clearly ridiculous over 100, but we're also not quite to the point of counting down at a magic number of 33, but it's no longer ridiculous either. Well, Michael, you need to follow JR because he's been doing the magic number countdown already, and it is at, I think, 30 now. So
time to 30, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess, Steve, when's an appropriate time to look at the magic number?
I usually figure when it's September.
Sure.
You need to have, I think, the finish line in sight for the season as well. And I mean, I get it. They have a 10-game lead right now. So that number is, getting weirdly low already. And we've had this the past couple of seasons where they've wrapped up the division, with a week or more to go. So, but usually with a lot of the stuff, I figure September is when I start actually turning towards the postseason reality. So that's when I'll start like acknowledging the magic number. Where now it's just fun for JR to pull up pictures of old players and post that, the jersey number with whatever the number of games are left.
I think magic number is much more fun when it's a closer thing and you're trying to fight people off. And so you could pay attention to it now because now it's just almost a formality. It's much more important to pay attention to the Phillies and Dodgers at this point. So like magic number is like an afterthought at this point in terms of that.
I mean, I am looking forward to Craig getting eliminated down in Chicago.
That's true.
I won't deny that. I look forward to when that number hits and we can say, congratulations, your season's over.
Yeah. If you get eliminated before Craig Tember even starts, you can't have Craig Tember.
That's true. Yeah. And there's, still some, churning going on below the Brewers in the NL Central. Like, yeah, they've got the 10-game lead, but whoever's in second place has changed a couple of times in the last week too. And I think, Paul, you mentioned it's sort of matriculating back to the run differential.
It is. It's really fun to watch, actually. It's fun to watch regression in real time. So I am hoping it ends that way because that would just be a wonderful coincidence. But also fair, It's been garbage that the Cardinals have been so high for so long with their stupid bad run differential. Let's crush them.
Yeah, and I am looking forward to the Cubs finishing with a losing record with a positive run differential, which is a total reversal of what we usually see with Craig Counsell teams. So that's fun. All right, Tricky Henderson asking, can the Crew go Nationals in 2019 when Harper was traded and they win it all, or Atlanta in 2021, Acuna hurt, they won it all, and win it all in 2024 with no Yelich? Can the answer be yes, just this once? Side note, the band Fiery Furnaces did a song about the White Sox called 1917. The lyrics include, quote, "So I asked Dad, why can't we ever win once?" The song was released in 2004. What happened in 2005? Doggone White Sox won it all. In conclusion, can a brother-sister MKE-based duo make a song about the Crew so we can win it all just once? So, Paul, what do you think?
So I do think they have a method they can use to do this. And while they're not perfect and they have weaknesses, and we went over one of the big ones last week, which is their starting pitching can be abused by some of the bigger teams. I think they got a way to do this, which is just because their bullpen's going to be, I think, really nails by the time the playoffs actually roll around, especially if they do end up adding like Mizorowski and Yoho to go with everybody else. And we've seen how Devin Williams has been just absolutely dominant since coming back. I think if they just leverage some of their like hard throwing starters to get through, don't push Freddie 3 times through the order. Like let Myers and maybe even Montez, like, just go a little bit and then bullpen it, I think they can actually do it, because their bullpen, I think, once playoffs roll around, will be essentially unhittable. And while their offense isn't perfect, it at least has some amount of depth to it. They do have a bunch of guys that are over a 100 OPS. And I think if they can eke out like 3 or 4 runs a game, that they can just shut down everybody by leveraging things properly. You just don't want to let guys go too far, and you don't want to leave Colin Ray out there to eat one against the Dodgers. But you don't have to in the playoffs. You have options. So they're not like a perfect playoff build, but if they're smart about this, I do think they can kind of grind people into dust with defense and bullpen.
Yeah, it's all about the bullpen. And this also, I think, goes with the Twitter question we got a little bit later.
Yeah.
As far as what's it going to take to make this run, like what's a reason why you believe in this team? And it is a bullpen. I mean, we saw Devin Williams go through Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman in one game against the Dodgers, and he had Ohtani and Betts in the second one that they took from the Dodgers. I mean, they have the back end they have an entire bullpen, but they also have a back end of the bullpen that can really be a shutdown team if they have a lead going into the games.
Just got to force Elvis Peguero off the team, and then we're all ready to go.
Yeah, basically. So like, how do they do this without Yelich? It's like, yeah, you score enough. You have a defense that's going to prevent runs, and then you basically, use that bullpen. You go max bullpen through the playoffs. So, yeah, it can be done.
Yeah. Starter shouldn't go more than 4 innings in the playoffs.
Absolutely probably. Not. No. Unless it's like 10-0. That's the only reason it should ever happen.
I mean, maybe Freddie's got a game where he's really shoving and you can leave him out there. But even then, he always feels like he's walking that razor's edge. So, I mean, once he puts a guy on, I think after he gets through a couple innings in the playoffs, I'd probably yank him there too.
Yep.
Yeah, he's so homer prone, especially lately, that I'd worry about pushing that luck in the playoffs too. All right, we do have a Twitter question. So a reminder, even if you're not a patron, you can send us questions on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it at MKE Tailgates. And we got one from C. Paul Martin this week asking, as Steve alluded to, in terms of player health and development, is 2025 already looking better for a World Series run? For 2024, give me 3 reasons why the Brewers will make a deep run and 3 reasons why they won't. So what do we think here?
This season is looking better because they're gonna make the playoffs, and they've got a shot at even getting a bye, which would be phenomenal. And while they're missing Yelich, they'll probably be missing Yelich next year. And so, like, in terms of just projecting out, they're not going to have Williams next year, probably. They're not going to have Yelich next year. They're good at replacing people. You can't count the Brewers out and, like, say, these guys will be missing. There'll be no Phil, but they're probably not going to have Willie. And they're probably going to be able to leverage a couple guys like Yoho and Mizorowski, who will probably be on the roster next year, this year with the guys they're going to lose next year. So this is well set up for them to make a run. I think they're going to have like a historically great bullpen by the time the playoffs actually start. And next year, they probably will have a worse offense, even with a Churio step forward, and they will probably have to do some spaghetti throwing to replace a couple of bullpen guys. So this year looks better than next year will, and this is a good chance for them to actually get it done.
Yeah, when you're 97, 98% chance to make the playoffs at this point, that's always going to be better than the following year starting out whatever your percentage is at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is the time to do it. If they can get as much in place as possible, 3 reasons. It's what's in the back of the bullpen. You'll have Williams, McGill, Piamps, we'd probably say those are the final 3. Those are pretty good reason that they could make a deep run, and why won't they make a deep run? Yelich is out, so you don't have that. You got to figure out what to do with Frelick and I don't know, Adames' defense. Like the last thing you want is a playoff game where Willie
boots
one at the worst time. That's the kind of thing that can really derail your playoff chances. But hopefully they have such a lockdown bullpen they don't really have to deal with it because they're striking everybody out.
Yeah.
I think the optimism for next year comes with the fact that, if you want to say Yelich's back is fixed and you might get that one last glory year, in theory, you have maybe Brandon Woodruff coming back, to add to the starting rotation. I hope they don't consider that their big rotation addition, but I've already seen the joking going around, like get ready for, adding Yelich or Yelich being back is just like adding a premium free agent kind of talk, like we talked about at the trade deadline with Devin Williams. I don't know, but and then maybe you can factor in, Jackson Churio, second full year, full breakout to superstardom, but that's a lot of ifs and projections, as you guys were saying.
Yeah.
Like you can't really look that far ahead right now.
And I mean, we're gonna shake our heads thinking, how is this roster going to come together? Next spring, just like going into this season. Who's going to play at third, and who's going to be in the rotation, and the front office is pretty good about putting pieces together, even if we kind of look at it and go, I don't get it, or it just seems like there are a lot of holes. I mean, yeah, there are holes, but their ability to, I think, just be nimble and allow guys to fill those spaces. So again, when we go into the season and we look at it and say, how are they going to get all the outfielders time or something like that?
Yeah.
Like, it'll work itself out. In 162 games, it'll work itself out. You're going to need depth in certain places. Maybe you're dealing the depth, and then hopefully you get some guys to rise and fill some of those spots. Maybe Rhys Hoskins has just a better 162 games next year, and that's going to make a big difference. So, there are a lot of things, I think, going into next year where, again, we're going to question it, but you got to kind of allow some of the youth, I think, probably to rise up next season. That's going to be what they're leaning on quite a bit.
Yep. At the same time, hope's not a plan. So I don't know.
Well, we always say it's hope every year, but then we see how the plan comes together and we go, well,
good plan.
Yeah,
they got it.
They had an idea.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for that Twitter question. Reminder at MKE Tailgate if you want to send us a question there every week. No guarantees we get to it because patrons get question priority. Go to patreon.com/MKE Tailgate. $2 a month guarantees you get that question answered every week, both here and on reporting as eligible. No new patrons, as far as I can tell, a shout out this week. So just another plug there. But, that'll do it. There's a lot to look forward to. I don't know if we counted on the Brewers having a 9 or 10 game lead when they face the Cardinals this upcoming week, but there's probably a chance there to kind of put the Cardinals in the ground too, which is always nice if you can do that before September as well. So we'll see how that series goes. Steve, thanks for taking time out of your Sunday morning to join us this week. Appreciate having you here. Anything else you want to mention? Shout out efforts to keep Ryan outside the U.S.?
No, I will say the question you're saving for next week. He asked for a recommended fish show to build his appreciation. I have a July Red Rock show from '94. That would be a good one to start with if you're looking for something. So, but Ryan will get to it next week. Yeah. He'll give you more detail.
That's a good reminder. Yes, I did pull aside the question from Cheese for Wilson Contreras' wine because it specifically asked Ryan for fish recommendations. I should have thought Steve would have had you covered there too, but that'll get you started. I'm sure Ryan will have at least 5 more for you next week. So we'll get to that one then. In the meantime, thanks for listening, everybody. Be on the lookout for Paul's reporting as eligible episode dropping in the next week or so, and we will see you here next time on Milwaukee's Tailgate. Have a good day, everyone.
Fair weather fan, it's not what I am, even though the simple code has changed. I might smile and joy where I'm unemployed. Your soul can't be rearranged. It's hard to understand. It's so hard to understand. Fair weather.